A pleasant good morning to those of you who have joined us live right here at Government House, and those of you watching us online on the Government of the Virgin Islands Facebook page. It's Tuesday, the 4th of November, 2025. My name is Yusezi Adams, the Communications Officer 2 within the Office of a Deputy Governor and the Governor's Group. This morning you've joined us for a live press conference where His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Daniel Pruce, will provide updates on security in the Virgin Islands and other matters relating to his portfolio. Following me and following the Governor's remarks, His Excellency will take questions from members of the media who have joined us here at Government House. Without any further ado, I'll invite His Excellency the Governor to make his remarks.
Morning, everyone. It's good to see you. Thank you very much for coming this morning for our latest in our series of regular press conferences. It's good to welcome you to Government House this morning. Welcome to people joining online. I'll run through a few items by way of introduction, and I'm very happy to take questions in our usual format. Let me begin, firstly, by noting the recent passage of Hurricane Melissa through our region. I'm expressing my thoughts and solidarity with everyone who's been affected by the passing of this devastating weather event. I'm thinking particularly of Jamaica, a country of which many in the Virgin Islands have very close links, family links, links of friendship as well. I know, for example, in the two law enforcement services for which I'm responsible, the prison service and the police force. There are many Jamaican members of both organizations and many close family links too. We stand ready, I know, as a territory to provide assistance and support. I know many are already doing so on their own initiative. The United Kingdom has also been providing emergency humanitarian funding. We think very, very much of all of our Jamaican friends and colleagues and hope that they will be able to come through this very difficult, challenging period successfully and as quickly as possible. Let me just say a few words, moving on from that, about a number of security matters, which will be the theme, I think, of our discussions this morning. Firstly, let me just touch on the escape from the prison, HMP Balsam Gut, last weekend of Jose Almestica and John Burgos. Obviously, colleagues will have seen, and members of the public would have seen, the regular updates both from the prison and the police force. I had the opportunity Monday of last week to visit the prison and was able to meet with the team there who have been working hard to be clear around the circumstances that led to the escape. The superintendent has commissioned his own internal investigation. But also the prison team are doing a great job maintaining security and order and a sense of calm up at the prison estate as well. Obviously, we've had a number of meetings of the National Security Council. Following developments, we've been briefed by both the superintendent and representatives of the RVIPF. And through my office, we've been in close contact with the responsible ministry in the United Kingdom, the Ministry of Justice. I'm able to confirm this morning that alongside the local internal investigations into this matter, with the support of the Ministry of Justice, I have commissioned a full independent external investigation into the circumstances that led to the escape of Jose Amestica and John Burgos. And that will be an important part, I think, of the follow-up process to this incident. As we've gone through the subsequent days, from our office, the United Kingdom has sought to provide such assistance as it can to the RVIPF. So I've been in touch with other governors in the region to see where they can lend assistance in terms of policing resources. And in terms of some of the international liaison, for example, the issuing of Interpol red notices, colleagues in the United Kingdom have offered support and assistance. I should take the opportunity to remind everyone, of course, to follow the guidance that the police have consistently been issuing during this period. Of course, we should all stay calm. We should continue to go about our daily business. But in so doing, of course, we take the usual sensible measures for our own security as we would normally. As the police have emphasized, if you feel you see either of these individuals, please do not approach them, but report any information in relation to a sighting or any other aspect of this to the police as quickly as possible, also through calling Crime Stoppers. Crime Stoppers on 800-8477, 800-8477. That's the number for Crime Stoppers. Thank you. The next item I'd like to say a few words on relates to the Anti-Crime Summit, which was hosted in the last week of September under the auspices of the National Security Council. That was an amazing 2.5 days at the multipurpose sports complex. We had anticipated it being an opportunity to have a broader, wider range of discussions about crime, both its causes and its consequences, than perhaps has been the case previously. High levels of community participation, representatives from NGOs, speakers from overseas as well. I was very struck by the breadth of the discussions we had during the summit, the high levels of engagement from everyone that was able to join, either in person or online. And also the very, very clear commitments that were made by those who took part. I was particularly struck on our first evening by a presentation that we had from the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, and that did set the context in terms of criminality within the territory. So, for example, and these were figures that were really looking at the period from January to September of this year, so some of them may have evolved still further since then. But robbery from January to September of this year has increased by 58% compared to the same period last year. And when you make the comparison with the 5-year average, the increase is 131%, so a significant uptick there. Over a similar period, we'd seen that minor assaults compared to last year had increased by 8%, serious assaults up by 9%, and motor vehicle theft has increased by 15% as well. And again, up until September, I think this figure has increased since then, but up until September, the police had recovered 18 firearms and 1,146 rounds of ammunition. And I think the challenge of firearms, which is something we did discuss at the summit in some detail, is particularly noteworthy. Of the 30 robberies that had taken place in the territory in the first 8 months of this year, 25 of those robberies involved the use of a firearm. I think the other observation I would make is of those 18 firearms that had been secured in the first 8 months of the year, I think they were largely from individual seizures. I think in previous years the total number of firearms seized has been higher, but that's tended to be as a consequence of a smaller number of larger seizures. So there's a change in the pattern and apparently an increase in the individual illegal possession of firearms. So that was, I think, a very sobering context at the start of the Crime Summit presented by the police on the first evening, as I say, we had a very, very positive subsequent couple of days discussing across the whole of government, across the wider community, the steps that we could take collectively to address some of the causes and mitigate some of the consequences of criminal behavior. We concluded by making a number of commitments. All of us who participated, I know that the summit team are producing a compendium of those various commitments. But let me just say a few words about those that I made on the summit's final day. I'll just run through them fairly quickly. So firstly, I undertook to put in place a senior strategic security advisor in my office. This is somebody who will be a security professional with a lot of experience who can provide expert guidance and support on all matters related to the safety and security of the Virgin Islands. That will be a significant and very positive addition to the capability in my office. That position will be fully funded by the United Kingdom through the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And we are in the process of identifying an individual that could fulfill that role. I would hope to have them in place in the early part of next year. And I think that would bring significant benefit across the board to the work that we are doing in the security and justice space. Flowing from that, although the work is already starting to get underway, I made a commitment to develop a security strategy for the territory. This, I think, will be an important complement to the anti-crime strategy, which is one of the other commitments from the summit itself. As we know, we've had a number of reports and analyses of how the security and justice sector within the territory is operating and where things could improve and be developed. So I think the security and justice strategy will give us a strategic context for taking that work forwards, and also help us foster greater coherence between the various agencies involved. My third commitment very much tried to build on the spirit that had been so apparent at the Crime Summit, and that was to put in place a community advisory group for the National Security Council. It became very clear that the knowledge and the insights that members of the public, civil society and the community can bring to the NSC's work is incredibly valuable. So I want to find a way to institutionalize that through the creation of an advisory group. We will seek to take that forward in the coming months. One of the problems that we heard about during the summit related to the ability of the police to stay in touch with itself when it was out and about responding to incidents. The radio communications capability of the police has just not been the same since Hurricane Irma. So I made a commitment to draw on United Kingdom support to help develop steps to improve the radio communications capability within the police force. We have already welcomed a subject matter expert to the Virgin Islands. He was able to visit last month and work closely with the RVIPF and the director of the 911 Emergency Response Centre. And during that visit was able to assess current police communications systems and explore options to develop a new police radio network. A paper for Cabinet, which will set out some of the detail of this proposal and costings attached, is under preparation. I think is quite close to being finalised. And I was delighted to be joined on my own visit to the 911 Centre by Minister Vincent Weedy, Minister for Health and Social Development. A second stage in this programme of support for radio communications capability will be a visit to Anguilla for a member of the RVIPF and also the director of the 911 Centre to see how Anguilla's joint emergency service control room operates, how it performs in action, and to take from that any lessons which would be relevant to our improving our capability here in the Virgin Islands. My fifth commitment related to the prison and doing what I can to help support the comprehensive action that's needed to address a number of deficiencies within the prison estate. As we heard on the very first evening of the summit up at the prison, we have no tailor-made capability for juvenile inmates. We have challenges there dealing with inmates that may have mental health conditions. The infrastructure needs support. The infrastructure needs repair. This has been a long-standing issue. I've been grateful to the superintendent of the prison for being able to give us his perspective on where development is required. Following the crime summit, the UK's lead prison estates director from the Ministry of Justice, a gentleman called Richard McSeveny, was able to spend some time at the prison considering those practical issues in relation to the estate and helping to develop a strategic plan for the future. That will be a long-term program of work and one which obviously will require funding. At this stage, I think we are drawing on UK expertise to help diagnose the best approach and also help with the design and the planning moving forwards. 3 more commitments from me, and then I'll conclude. So number 6 related to a radar system for the Virgin Islands. We were able to welcome the UK's Joint Maritime Security Centre to the Virgin Islands recently, and they have since then been developing plans to help improve the Virgin Islands' maritime domain awareness. They're working in partnership with other overseas territories as well and have recently put in place coastal radar systems both in Anguilla and TCI, Turks and Caicos Islands. We will see how those 2 systems work in practice, and the JMSC will learn the lessons from those 2 territories to help inform the installation of a similar system in the Virgin Islands, which I expect to happen next year. A radar system of this sort will enable real-time monitoring of our coastal waters and thereby support authorities in their efforts to detect suspicious activity and to respond quickly to threats. My 7th commitment is one that I've made before, but it remains an important one, so it's worth reiterating, and that's to continue to work to realize my vision of a highly professional, fully vetted and properly resourced Virgin Islands Police Force. That work continues with a broad range of United Kingdom support and also close partnership with the leadership of the RVIPF. That's a continuing program, which remains absolutely critical to our security as a territory. And then my final commitment was one which really envisaged a partnership of working across the board with those in local government and beyond who can help us address some of these long-standing resourcing challenges within the security sector. Again, it was a very clear theme from the Anti-Crime Summit that a number of the institutions upon which our security and safety relies have been facing resourcing issues. Since the summit, I've taken forward detailed discussions with the police, the prison, and the Director of Public Prosecutions concerning their resourcing priorities. I've been grateful to the Financial Secretary, who was very engaged in those discussions as well, and I think it helps identify where the highest priority needs lie. This is a topic which I've discussed with the Premier, and we've touched on it in the National Security Council and Cabinet, and I'm grateful for the way that colleagues have been open to engaging on this issue. Mindful also that the budgetary process will be getting underway with the budget speech a little later this week. So I think I'll conclude there. I think my final remark before taking questions would be just to pay tribute once again to all of the officers that are working with great devotion and commitment in the security and justice sectors. This is an absolutely critical area of our activity. It's something which touches the lives of everyone who lives in the Virgin Islands. And it also, of course, is directly relevant to my duty and my responsibility to ensure the security and the safety of everyone who lives in these beautiful islands. So let me conclude there. I'll pass over to Mr. Adams, who I think is going to compare for us. I'm very happy to take some questions. I'd be delighted to have a glass of water if one were available as well, please. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Cindy, go ahead.
Good morning. Cindy Rosango of Berry Media. Governor, two murderers are on the loose, and the RVIPF is saying there is no evidence to suggest that they've left the territory. The courts have now gone virtual in fear, and two shootings have happened, and people are uneasy. One of my questions is head of prison, Jay Kendall, still on the job? Any evidence of his involvement or other prison staff involvement in the escape? Is evidence showing that this may have been an inside job?
Thank you, Cindy, for the question. So, obviously, in terms of the activity in place at the prison, there are two main strands. First is obviously ensuring the secure and effective management of the prison on a day-to-day basis, as you would expect the team to be doing. But secondly is working to fully investigate the circumstances that led to the escape. And I think the prison are doing that in conjunction with the RVIPF as well. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to sort of preempt any of the conclusions that that investigation may reach. But based on the briefings that we've had in the National Security Council and other fora, I'm confident that that work is being taken forward with great diligence and determination. But relevant to your question as well is the separate external investigation that I've announced this morning, which will be conducted by an outside body. The Ministry of Justice in the UK are helping us identify the people that could take that forwards for us, and I hope to get that underway without delay. So it's important at the moment, I think, that we focus very much on the immediate issues in hand, and as you say, we all are following very closely the investigation and the search for the two people who did escape that night. The wider implications and the consequences that may flow from what happened, I think, depend upon the results of both the internal investigation and then also the external investigation, which I hope will get underway very quickly.
I'm not sure if you responded to whether Jay Kendall is still on the job or not.
Yes, Superintendent Kendall is still on the job.
Okay.
Thank you.
My second question, can you speak to the alleged attempts to remove Acting Commissioner Vanterpool from her position and your reasoning behind wanting to do so?
Thank you. So I think, as you know, I never comment in detail on my relationships with senior colleagues, whether that's in the security sector or anywhere in the public sector. And I won't begin to do that today. And that's just a basic principle of confidentiality which extends to all staff. I think in relation to the police and the senior team there, including the acting commissioner, obviously that's a very, very important partner for me. It's a group of people that I work with extremely closely. Indeed, just in recent days, I've had multiple meetings and discussions with them. My absolute top priority remains working with the police, with the prison, with the wider law enforcement and security sector, to ensure that I can fulfill my duties to the people of the Virgin Islands. I've got obligations under the Constitution. In relation to the police, I've got obligations under the Police Act as well. And that work continues, and those very close personal relationships continue to do all they can to deliver the safety and security for the Virgin Islands that is expected by the people who live here.
We have follow-up questions? Yes. So is it your intention to remove her? Because I don't think that question was answered.
So again, I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to go into detail on matters which are part of my professional relationship with senior colleagues. It's a perfectly reasonable question for you to ask, and I'm not seeking to constrain your ability to do so, but equally, I'm sure you'd understand that, as we've said before, matters that relate to my professional relationship with colleagues across the board are quite rightly matters which are treated on a confidential basis.
Thank you. Can you give an update on the Auditor General's investigation in the Bank of Asia matter?
So as far as I'm aware, the Auditor General continues to work on that investigation. As you know, the Auditor General is independent, cannot be directed, and once she begins an investigation, it's entirely a matter for her and her offices. So my understanding is that that work is underway, and I assume that the Auditor General will submit the report once it's completed.
Good morning, Governor. Sean Connolly here, business editor of the BVI Beacon. Robbery's up 60% in a year. You're asking for resources from other islands. Violent crimes up, shootings, one yesterday, prison breaks, murderers on the loose. You've lost control of the situation, haven't you?
Thank you, Sean. Good morning. How are you? Good to see you.
Very well.
So thank you for the question. You may choose to characterize it that way. I think the reality is that across the board, all agencies that can contribute to the security and the safety of the islands are working hard to achieve that. It's a practical reality that the scale and complexity of criminality across the region, including the Virgin Islands, is evolving. We've noted that many times previously in these press conferences. I'm confident that every effort is being made, both within the Virgin Islands, but also in partnership with other territories and with other security partners to respond to those challenges. But this is a dynamic situation. It doesn't remain still. And those stats that I shared with you at the start of my discussion, I think illustrate the way that the trends in recent months have not been in a positive direction, which is why we're redoubling our efforts to address those.
As a follow-up to that, can you see the arguments for, or appreciate the arguments for transferring the security responsibilities, the law and order responsibilities, to the elected government here, who are obviously closer and more in touch to the voters? I mean, why should it remain the remit of the governor? Surely, how would you answer people who say that's not just colonialist, it's also institutionally racist, because it means that control over security and law and order always remains in white British hands?
It's the Constitution, Sean. We're working within the terms of the Constitution. And, you know, when I was sworn in, January of last year, the commitment I made was to fulfill my duties within the Constitution. That's the Constitution as it stands. Of course, security across the whole of the Virgin Islands, it's something which involves a broad range of partners. And we saw a very vivid illustration of that with the participation we had at the Anti-Crime Summit. But I think the answer to your question, if I may, from my perspective, doesn't touch on some of those issues that you inferred. It sits within the fact that we have a constitution which sets out responsibilities and duties which sit with the governor in relation to security. And therefore, I am constitutionally bound. It's my duty to do my best to fulfill those.
You say it's constitution, but do you appreciate that some people would see that constitution as inherently racist?
People will have their own opinions. That's not something for me to make a comment on or judge one way or the other. But the Constitution is the document upon which everything we do is founded. And that is the document which determines my responsibilities in relation to security, as well as the entire functioning of government here.
Okay, second question, if I may. Could you give an update, please, on the police commissioner hiring process? When we could expect an announcement of the results of the process, and also where are we with the police vetting process? What's the delay there?
Thank you. So on the process to recruit a new commissioner of police, that is a process which sits within the responsibilities of the Police Service Commission, They are managing that process. I am not involved in it. When they have reached a point that they can submit a nomination for the new commissioner, that will go through the usual process of consideration in the National Security Council, and then a recommendation will come to me. So I'm not privy to the detail of that process. In terms of vetting, I think, as we discussed the last time we gathered in this room, the vetting process remains an open process. We've had a significant number of officers submit their vetting papers, around 100, for which I'm grateful. As you'll know, a legal challenge was raised in relation to the process, and I think the judgment in that case is expected later this month, but that's a matter for the courts. It's not something that I'm responsible for. But meanwhile, the vetting process is open and running.
Okay. Finally, the government's announced the airport expansion plans, or at least part of it. The full business case is not yet complete, but the government is nonetheless launching the procurement process by proceeding with a request for expressions of interest. This appears to violate Section 11 of the 2012 Protocols for Effective Financial Management. Have you, or has the UK government or the FCDO given the government the green light to disregard the protocols?
So I think, in terms of the process the Virgin Islands government is following in terms of the procurement process, I think that's a question for them with respect rather than for me. In terms of the runway project more generally, the outline business case was considered in Cabinet recently. I think it was in September we looked at that. Obviously, while I chair Cabinet takes its decisions on the matters that come to it. The status of the full business case is obviously a separate matter, and one that I direct you to the Virgin Islands government to respond to, I think.
Okay, final follow-up to that then. Given your often stated commitment to transparency, have you urged the government to provide the completed parts of the business case to the public? If not, why not?
So again, I think the handling of the full business case and the sharing of that with other parties is a matter for the Virgin Islands government. So I direct your question towards them, Sean, if I may.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Zan Lewis, ZBVI Radio. Governor, after the escape from the prison, you visited that facility. You said that. When was the last time you visited the prison, apart from since the escape?
So we can give you dates, Zan, but I regularly go up there. Typically every couple of months I'm there. I see the superintendent every month. Sometimes he'll come here, sometimes I'll go to see him. Sometimes I go on my own. There have been occasions where I've gone with Minister Vincent Wheatley. As you know, the Ministry of Health also have a responsibility for the prison. So I am a regular visitor to the prison estate.
When last you visited the prison and examined, you boasting, based on what the Constitution said, you're responsible for security of this territory. When last did you visit the territory, visit the prison, and examine the security at the prison, the security cameras, the CCTV cameras? When last you visit or got information on that?
So whenever I visit the prison, we look at a range of issues which are relevant to the prison's management. Security is one of those, and is an important one of those. So on previous visits, I have discussed issues ranging from the physical security layout of the prison. We've recently been working with the Ministry of Justice looking at the hardware, actually, the locks and those sort of practical aspects of security at the prison. But then security ranges beyond that to issues such as the ability of the prison staff to be able to respond to incidents quickly and safely. So one of the things which I have examined on previous visits and which I've discussed with the superintendent relates to the provision of radio communication to prison staff, which the Ministry of Justice have funded. And that improved communication capability is already making a difference to the staff's ability to respond to incidents of violence at the prison, or incidents where people are seeking to throw contraband over the prison fence and into the prison as well. So again, that's another dimension, I think, of the security question, which I've been able to discuss on previous visits. Just to finish the questions, and then I'll come back to you, forgive me. But of course, you know, the management and functioning of the prison, obviously, you know, the practical security arrangements are an important element of that, but there are other dimensions which are also the focus of my visits. So I think it was very, very clear in our discussions at the Anti-Crime Summit that, you know, a successful prison is not only a place of incarceration, it's also a place of rehabilitation. So the work that is being taken forward up at the prison to provide, you know, an improved rehabilitative offer to inmates there, I think has been really important and is absolutely consistent with experience of successful prisons in other jurisdictions. Otherwise, we end up in a cycle where as people go into the prison system, they actually come out better equipped for a life of criminality rather than with an opportunity to make better choices in their life. So the rehabilitation side of things is also an important theme. And then my final point, then I'll pass back to you, Zan, is also looking at ways that the community can become more aware of circumstances at the prison and where they would want to become involved and provide support. I was quite struck at the Anti-Crime Summit. There were a number of prevailing views which painted a picture of the prison which wasn't the prison I recognized. You know, I think it was from some time ago where clearly there were some significant issues up on the prison estate. Things have moved along a lot since then, and I think it's important that we do find ways to enable the prison to have a high level of awareness amongst the community, and also, you know, where people are minded to, if they have an opportunity and would like to support, that they're able to do so.
I'm not talking about rehabilitation at the prison, Governor. I'm speaking about security at the prison. You are responsible for security at the prison. So you should have been aware, Governor, that at the time of the escape, certain CCTV cameras were not working. There were cameras outside, based on reports, there were cameras in the recreation area. There are certain cameras outside that have been blocked by bush. So you should have been aware that those cameras were not working. If you were not aware, sir, that those cameras were not working, it's an indication that you have not been doing a job. Would you agree with me? Are you aware that those cameras at the prisons are not working at the time of the escape?
Thank you. So, two dimensions to my answer on that, Zan, if I may, and again, it's a perfectly fair question. I think you would fully understand that it would not be appropriate for me to go down into the detail of which cameras may or may not be functioning at the prison. You know, that in itself would compromise security, and given, as you say, our shared interest in preserving the security of the prison, that's not something I'm going to do. But my second point would be, on my most recent visit to the prison, and indeed on previous visits, the question of CCD coverage has been an important theme of those conversations. And a number of steps have been taken to improve that coverage, both in relation to the technology of the system itself, but also the point you raise around addressing obstructions which might have hindered the view. And, you know, there's been quite a significant amount of bush cutting, for example, that's taken place in recent months. When I was last up there, on my last visit, I did spend some time in the CCTV monitoring room, the control room, where all of the prison CCTV screens are displayed. That was very valuable to see. And as you would expect, with such a significant spread of cameras. You know, there are some that need attention. That's an ongoing process. One of the issues that I discussed with the superintendent, and something that I hope moving forwards we can improve, is just trying to speed up the sort of resolution time where there may be an issue with a camera, whether that's obstruction, whether that's technology, whatever it is, whether it's something to do with the mounting. Because as you say, you know, the CCTV element is a very important element of the overall security architecture at the prison.
Governor, the Constitution gives you places in your position the person responsible for security in the Virgin Islands. From the time you came here some years ago, you have been talking about being concerned about the safety of the people of the Virgin Islands. That's your duty. But at the same time, Governor, there's an escape at the prison. Among other things, the CCTV cameras are in question. Crime is up in the Virgin Islands. Remember, you're responsible for national security. And all of this is happening under your watch. And obviously, sir, I hope that's not a good feeling for you. That's not something good to go to be written, that all of this is happening under your watch. Do you think that the situation is now right? Because the Premier would have spoken about, imagine the governor has responsibility for the security of this territory. It's unbelievable. Don't you think that this is the perfect time for some decision to be taken? Actually, sir, you are being blamed at this time, being responsible for national security, for the insecurity of the people here in the Virgin Islands. It's under your watch why all of this is happening. This is why persons in the BVI are not feeling safe at this time, because you are the minister and the person responsible for security. Isn't it the perfect time, sir, for the whole issue of national security be removed from the governor under the Constitution and placed under the hands of the Premier and the government?
Yeah, thank you, Zan. And I think that picks up a question that I've already answered. But let me just say a few words in relation to the points that you've made. I mean, yes, obviously, the Constitution gives the governor responsibility for security. I am the governor, so therefore I am responsible. And that's a fact. At the same time, the consequences of the situation we find ourselves in with the increased crime rates, as I described during this presentation, the escape from the prison, the other issues around the territory which are understandably causing people concern. You know, the nature of the response, I think, is multifaceted. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. You know, we're seeing a very concerted effort by the police in relation to the escape, but other issues, the other issues that concern citizens in this territory, whether that's robberies, whether that's prevalence of firearms, whether that's the social disturbance and nuisance created by scooters that we see on our streets, unlicensed, people not wearing helmets, mufflers removed. So all of these issues do require coordination, partnership, and resourcing to be able to deal with them effectively. You raise, as did an earlier questioner, the question of constitutional responsibility and whether it's time to consider a change in that. I'll be totally frank, Zan, my focus is on working within the legislation and the Constitution that we have. You know, the most effective thing that I can do, working with the full breadth of the security and justice sector, is to use what capability we have to respond effectively to the problems that we face. We have had valuable discussions, both within government, the NSC, cabinet, other bodies, and also with the wider community, for example, at the Anti-Crime Summit, to help diagnose and therefore put in place steps to deal with these issues. My discussions with the British government equally are helping provide support and assistance, which I should say, you know, we often lose sight of this, but since 2018, we've had over $10 million worth of assistance from the United Kingdom government in this sector. We had a range of police and other advisors in territory earlier this year. As I've illustrated in this presentation, there's more assistance in train as well. So I think the focus has to be, in my view, for this person in this role with this constitutional responsibility, the focus has to be doing everything we can with the resources available to us to respond to the very real threats that we have and which people are experiencing and which they are rightly concerned about. The broader question of where responsibility may lie or may not lie in the future, of course I can see people are discussing that, and it's understandable that they would. But I wouldn't be serving the people of this territory effectively if I were doing anything other than focusing on the challenges we have in hand.
But would you say, or would you agree, sir, that under your watch, things have not been going good as regards security?
The statistics I shared with you earlier speak for themselves. They show...
Yes.
I'll answer the question in my own words, Anne, if I may, if that's okay. Shall I continue? So the statistics I shared with you earlier speak for themselves. You know, robbery increases of 58% over the same period last year. Minor assaults up. Serious assaults up. Motor vehicle theft up. You know, these are all issues of very serious concern. People are rightly concerned about them. And, you know, the reason that I am mentioning them in this press conference is because this is a press conference about security, which sits within my constitutional responsibilities. But we can't wish them away. We can't pretend that they are not there. We have to expose ourselves to the data, recognize the challenges that we're facing, and then work to address them. And it's that question of working to address them which is my focus and has to be my focus, working with the police and the other security bodies to help tackle these issues.
I just had one more question. I apologize. These phones do what they want. My last question is simple. There's a war brewing right in our backyard, and there has not been any acknowledgement whatsoever from the Premier's office or from the Government House. Is there a reason for that?
Cindy, expand on your question a little, please.
Expand? There's a war that America is building on Venezuela, whatever the purpose of the war is. And I mean, we can consider it right in our backyard. It's in the Caribbean. We have warships that sailed into St. Thomas. They're stationed in Puerto Rico. They're in St. Croix. So what I wanted to know was why there is a silence. And I'm not saying that, you know, the BVI should come out and support the war. I'm just saying there has been a silence from the Premier's office and from the Government House in terms of that situation. Is there a reason for that? Is it that you guys are just staying out and letting it, you know, people have been asking, the conversations are happening, and there's just no acknowledgement from authorities?
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, for the question. I mean, that's not a matter that I would offer a comment on. I can certainly inform myself in terms of commentary that may have come from the British Foreign Secretary or ministers in the UK on that matter, and be happy to share that with you. Thank you. Sure.
Oh, hi. In September, the Premier told the UN Decolonisation Committee that he wanted a timetable for independence from Britain. Are you open to that idea? Is that likely to be coming forth?
So, you're familiar with the United Kingdom's well-known position in terms of increased autonomy for any overseas territory. And sure, take a seat. And you know, that has been something which I think Minister Doughty has himself recently reiterated as well. So it really depends upon the majority wishes of the citizens of the overseas territory in question, expressed in a constitutional way. But let me supplement that answer with obviously a reflection in terms of the discussions that we've seen here in the Virgin Islands in relation to constitutional reform, on which we've had a very interesting debate in the House of Assembly, and I think the committee stage in the House has now just about reached its conclusion. I would expect when we get to London at the end of this month for the JMC, the Joint Ministerial Council, the regular annual meeting of premiers with ministers in the UK, I would fully expect some of those constitutional matters to be discussed. I'm sure the Premier and Minister Doughty will touch on those matters when they meet, which they will inevitably do in the margins of the Council. This question of setting timetables towards independence wouldn't be something for me to comment upon, but I could certainly anticipate, and indeed I think Minister Doughty has already made this point, that one of the topics for consideration in the light of the discussions that have been taking place here in the Territory would relate to the timing for taking forward those constitutional discussions as well. Obviously, the substance is a separate matter. But I think let us see how discussions develop at the Joint Ministerial Council in the last week of November.
Governor, some time ago, you stated categorically that the acting Commissioner of Police, Jacqueline Vanterpool, is doing a good job. She's doing a fantastic job. You continue to say, in the meantime, that having a police commissioner depends on the Police Service Commission, and the recommendation is made to you, is taken to cabinet, and the decision is made. You know and I know. That's not all to it. You can make a decision as regards having a new police commissioner here in the Virgin Islands. So what you're stating with the Public Service Commission, that is just part of the process. But everyone knows you can make a decision, I believe what they call an executive decision, you can correct me, as regards choosing a police commissioner. Do you maintain it still that you outlined the number of robberies, so on, yeah, the escape at the prisons, lack of security, you have to be blamed for that. So you're responsible also. Do you maintain the same position by the acting police commissioner is doing a good job? Or would you like her to continue, probably as police commissioner, to continue on the track in which she's moving? Because she knows the BVI society, she knows the people in the Virgin Islands. Would you maintain that she's doing a good job, and you'd like to keep her in that position and make her Commissioner of Police?
Okay. Thank you, Zan. As I've said earlier in this conference this morning, and indeed in previous press conferences and other statements, I don't provide a running commentary on how senior colleagues are performing in their jobs, or indeed my sort of professional interaction with them. I do want to come back to the point you made around the process through which a new commissioner is appointed, which is set out very clearly. This is a process which is managed by the Police Service Commission, and rightly so. The final recommendation comes to me, but I am not in any way involved in the process that leads to that recommendation. And that's correct, and that's constitutionally appropriate. I have every confidence that the Police Service Commission are doing a diligent job, and I would hope to be hearing something from them imminently. But it is their duty and responsibility to fulfill that process diligently, to furnish the National Security Council with a recommendation, and for the NSC, building on the POSC advice, to then advise me. That's the point at which I'm empowered to take a decision. Thank you. Thank you.
You could refuse that recommendation. The recommendation from the Public Service Commissioner comes to you. You can refuse it, you can refuse that that person recommended by the Police Service Commission and make your own recommendation. That's correct?
So the process as set out in the Constitution is a process that's founded in advice. So the Police Service Commission advises, the National Security Council advises. The function of the NSC is to advise the governor. as the Constitution indicates, in relation to the advice that comes, including from the POSC, there is an element of discretion. I think the normal practice would be the POSC would advise once, they could be invited to advise a second time, and then the Constitution would allow for the governor to exercise discretion. But that has to be rooted in a justification which would serve the service of His Majesty the King. So the provisions are there in the Constitution. And I would just add to that the fact that the functioning of the process, and the process that we're in the midst of now and have been in the midst of since the job was advertised in the spring of this year, quite rightly sits fairly and squarely with the Police Service Commission.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Zan. Thank you, Mr. Adams. So, colleagues, thank you very much for attending. Thanks for your questions. As always, it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you very much to those who joined online. And look forward very much to the next press conference that we'll be holding, on which details will follow in the usual way. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.